What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Recovery Rebellion. My name is Tara Grace. I go by Burn the Stigma on social media. And today I have somebody who I connected with years ago and have just watched her from the beginning stages of her recovery blossom to be a powerhouse in her community. And I am joined with Sarah Jumper. And like I was telling Sarah, I'm like, typically my first question is, what brought you to your first AA meeting? But Sarah has such a powerful story of where she was to where she is now. Um, I think actually I will still ask you that question though. So what did bring you to your first meeting?
I'm really happy you did ask me that question because this is kind of like the origin, right? The beginning of it all. So, my mom brought me to my first AA meeting when I was an infant child. I probably don't
Okay.
remember my first AA meeting, but the ones that I do remember are definitely. I would bring a bucket of toys. I would sit underneath the table, and they would be up there smoking their cigarettes, drinking their coffee, and telling their war stories. I have memories from that point in my childhood up to being a teenager. I had my first kiss on the front porch steps of her AA clubhouse
I remember
with
you
her,
saying that.
yes, with her sponsor's son. His name was Ross. He was 2 years older than me and he was so cute. And it just literally, so if you can imagine just having these stories kind of like ingrained into who you are becoming as a person, and I remember so many things. Like we had the serenity prayer on probably in every room of our house.
Mm.
She would just constantly be quoting like AA scripture to me. I call it scripture because that's basically what that book is, right? It's a
Mhm.
Bible for what they call themselves, addicts and alcoholics.
Yep.
And I think the big thing that really stuck through with me, like the one thing that she would repeat to me all the time: jails, institutions, or death, Sarah. You have the gene. You're going to grow up and be an addict if you try alcohol. You're going to grow up and be an addict if you smoke weed. And if you can't get sober, that's where you're about. You're going to end up in jails, institutions, or an early grave. So
Mm.
that really stuck with me and became a self fulfilling prophecy, I feel.
So, with that implanted in your brain, what was it like when you first tried drugs and alcohol?
So, my first really experience with alcohol, it's so funny because even though I grew up hearing all these things, right? The first chance I got to try it, I did. I think I was probably 15 years old, in the attic of one of my friend's home. She had an older brother that was smuggling alcohol into the house, and we just took shots of rum. And I remember being like, oh, wow, this is kind of fun, like this is fun, but it still wasn't a thing. It didn't happen like she said it would happen, right? Like I wasn't
Mm.
searching for a bottle of liquor every chance I could get. I didn't just instantly morph into this alcoholic or like ravenous drug crazed fool. And she didn't know that I was doing that when I went over to hang out with my friends. So I kind of felt like I was keeping this secret. And even though it didn't happen like she said it would happen, I still believed at some point it was going to. I was waiting for that moment to where it totally took over my life, which is really important for another point in the story. We'll circle back to it.
Yeah. It's funny because like for me, my parents didn't drink, like they were just there was no it was always my mom would tell like, oh, when you take drugs, different people respond differently. So you
Yeah.
could get she would always tell me like I'm gonna get stuck. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
But I never like she didn't really know about drugs either. So
Right.
there was no when I first tried them, I was just shit, like this is
Yeah.
fun. And I think
Right.
as most young people do, when you go to Dare, or at least I went to Dare. Do you have
I did
Dare?
too. Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Oh, yeah.
I remember doing this skit for Dare and like having to do this drunk driving skit, and I remember thinking, I can't wait to like get drunk. Like this sounds
Me
like so
too.
much fun.
Isn't that crazy? They made it sound like so mysterious and like, they didn't, they would give you just enough information to try and scare you, but it didn't scare me. It enticed me. It made me think,
Yes.
there's something they're not telling me. There's a reason people are doing this. I'm a smart enough person to know that there's some reason these people are doing this. So maybe I want to do it. That's what
Yeah.
it did for me.
Yeah, totally. Then you just see people like celebrating, having fun, drinking, and it's like it can't be that bad if like all my aunts and uncles drink like my parents didn't,
Right.
but it can't be that bad. It's
Can't be that bad
everywhere.
if all these people are doing it.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. So when did I feel like, we all have this kind of moment where it turns from partying to not partying anymore, kind of necessity.
Yeah.
When did that kind of occur?
So there was a long period of time. So I was 15, when I had my first drink, and alcohol was never an issue for me. Like I would just do it here and there with friends for social reasons. So I just never really got that, you know, I guess I didn't have to change after all, if my mom's right. But so that kind of came and went throughout my young adulthood. But this is the crazy part, right? So my mom was a lifelong member of Alcoholics Anonymous. She was for 30 years. She had forged these friendships and made this family. She had some surgeries that caused her to be completely disabled, and eventually those led to two amputations of her legs below the knee, one above, one below, actually. And her doctor prescribed her opioid pain medication. Duh, like she had
Yeah.
some serious pain, right? But I think because of her own beliefs, well, I'll just walk you through it all. She followed her doctor's orders, started taking that medication. This was around the opioid epidemic, which we could do a whole other podcast episode on my beliefs and thoughts about that. But her doctor prescribed this medication. She was following her doctor's orders, and she told her friends in AA about it, and they shunned her. They stopped taking calls from her, stopped coming to see her. She would go to meetings, and they would all migrate to the other side of the meeting room. And the saddest part of this all was she would say, I get it. I understand why they did it. And
Oh,
looking back on it, that breaks my heart, right?
yeah.
Because these were more than just AA buddies. These were best friends, her replacement for a family. And the moment she just followed a doctor's orders, and even though they're all in their chain smoking cigarettes and downing, you know, tons of coffee, this prescribed medication was the thing that broke the deal for them. Um, so so that happened, and I was her primary caretaker. I was the person lifting her from the bed to the potty to the this to the that, taking her
Mm.
to all of her appointments. Some changes happened in my young adult life personally. I started having children. I met the father of my kids, started spending more time with him, and started having kids. I moved out of her home. She had some mental health issues that made it incredibly difficult for us to have a relationship. She was manic depressive, and also looking back on it, I think she had some narcissistic tendencies, and she would lash out at me, and she just made it incredibly difficult to have a relationship with her. So I moved out of the home for my own safety, for my kids' safety, and she got some nurses. We got her some caretakers. But she started, after a period of time of us being separate, things started cooling off a little bit, and I could come back around and help her. And she started giving me a half a Percocet every time I would come over. And it wasn't anything that I was like looking forward to or needing. It wasn't like, an addictive thing at this time, but it was just something that I started, you know, okay, thanks, mom. Yeah. She would be like, oh, you look like you're in so much pain. You're hurting. I can tell that lifting me is causing you some pain. Here, take a half of this, take a half of that. And then we'd sit down and watch TV together. And all of a sudden, we weren't fighting, yelling, or arguing. We were just chilling out and having a good time together. And that would have been fine, right? But the insidious nature of this is that, you know, if I couldn't come over, I couldn't get her a pack of cigarettes, it would turn into, well, you're just using me for my pills. Well, I'm
Ugh.
going to tell your aunt that you're just using me for my pills, and it made me feel like a terrible person. So I
Yeah.
started identifying with all these things that I grew up learning,
Mm.
and she was weaponizing that against me. Well, you're going to end up no good. You're going to jails, institutions of death, all these places you're bound for because look, you're addicted to these things. That's all you care about now. God rest her soul. My mom was a very good person in a lot of ways and had a lot of good qualities, but something changed. I don't know what changed, and I'm sure it had a lot to do with her disabilities and
Yeah.
her mental health issues, and she had a lot of struggles, and I have empathy for those, and still working it all out in therapy. But she just really weaponized the 12 steps against me and made me second guess myself and think this is the only reason that I'm coming over here. I am a junkie.
Oh.
I am using her for her pills. Now she's threatening to tell my family this. And that's how it took off. I went and got my own prescription, then we were trading them back and forth. But I was just looped into this, like, I don't know. And I guess it goes back a little further than this. I guess I would have to tell you that I was kind of raised and groomed to be her caretaker from the jump. My mom was she was born with a hole in her heart, and she had a lot of disabilities and a lot of ailments. And, she wasn't meant to live past 10. And then she wasn't meant to live past 20. And then she would never have kids. And she broke down all these barriers and just blew all that out of the water. And she did survive, but nobody raised her to know how to be an adult, to know
Mm.
how to be a mother. So I was kind of like the built-in caretaker. I had plans and dreams to go to college. And when I would talk about them and get excited about them, I had my aunt over my shoulder going, "You'll be too far away. Your mom needs you closer to home." So, in that way, nobody raised me to be an adult or a parent or a mother. So, when my mom passed away when I was 26, I had all this emotional pain,
Mm.
all these undiagnosed and unmedicated conditions like ADHD and OCD. And I spiraled. I knew the one thing that fixed the problem and calmed my nerves was taking an extra pain pill, taking a few extra pain pills, taking a handful of extra pain pills. So to answer your question that you asked all those minutes ago, the moment where it turned from like fun, and I guess I never really, this part of my addiction was I guess in general, I was never really seeking to party or have fun. It was always medicating those undiagnosed conditions and easing the relationship between my mom and I, which ironically was only making it worse.
Right.
Hindsight is 2020.
Right,
So,
right.
so the moment though that it really took off was when she did die. And then like I said, I was left with all those unresolved issues and undiagnosed conditions. And that's what I did. I started overtaking my pain medication. Yeah.
Gotcha. So when we were talking before I hit record, I was
Mm-hmm.
saying, one thing that you really did for me is because I have my own bias and my own stigma that, I'm working on knocking down. The more I learn, the
Yeah.
more I educate myself, the more I can see it and understand it now a
Right.
hell of a lot more.
Yeah.
Um, but I think there's a lot of people who have had substance use disorder who would say like, "Oh, well, I would never get to where I'd be living on the street. Like I
Right.
would never let that happen to
Oh,
me."
yes. I've said those words many times.
If you don't mind
Mm-hmm.
explaining kind of
Yeah,
like how did you get there? And then I really want to get into just like how you were treated when you went into trying to
absolutely.
get help and all that stuff. But how did Sarah go from, the roof over her head to no longer having one?
I'm so happy to go there with you. And just funny enough, I was just in the car with my oldest son. We were going to get some lunch meat and other things we needed today, and I was telling him a story about being on the street because I'm very open with my kids. And I just had a moment, and I was like, it really feels like I'm telling a story about somebody else now.
Mm.
Like I finally am getting there where I'm not like identifying with that person in addiction on the streets. I feel like I'm healing from it enough that I can look at it, from it with a different perspective, because your body remembers more than your mind does sometimes. And there are times when I feel like I am in it. Like I will have a night there and I wake up feeling like I'm on the street again. And I'm reaching
Mm.
around trying to touch my pillows and my blankets and
Mm.
like ground myself because my body feels like it's still in that moment. But just this morning, I was telling a story and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm getting a grip on this. Like I'm coming on the other side of it. And December will be 4 years for me,
Wow.
to have been off the street. But to answer your question, so my mom passed when I was 26. And then there were 4 or 5 more years beyond that where I was just trying to maintain. But that maintaining looked like overtaking my prescription, sending 2 or 3 other people to the doctor and overtaking their prescriptions, spending the father of my kids' money like on even more pills. It was like a ravenous thing where this was now the only thing that was calming me, bringing me back to baseline, making me able to function as a mother and a partner and just a human being in society. Um, and there's a point in time where it just boiled over and we had to leave our apartment and move back in with his parents, which was it's it's hard to even talk about it because I still have so much shame around that I let it get that far, and that I was loved so much to the point where he would literally just come home and, you know, that's what his paycheck was spent on. And talking about it is hard, like, because that's never something that I wanted to do. Those are never actions that I wanted to take. And I almost think that it was more um, OCD than it was addiction because I just had this obsession with getting it, so I knew I would be safe.
Mm.
It was a compulsion because I would obsess about it, and then compulsive behavior I would do would be call somebody, take the money, and go get it. And then I felt this relief, not even taking the drugs, but the relief of getting them. Like it just relieved. It was a compulsive behavior. And now doing my work in therapy and knowing that I have OCD, I know that that was the driving force of it. The addiction was like secondary to it. So long story short, obviously, when you spend resources until they're gone, you end up in a position where you can't maintain anymore. And very, very gratefully, his parents let us come home,
Mm.
move in with him. But maybe a couple of weeks into that, Terrence and his mom came to me together and said, "We've done everything we can do. You have to figure this out. There isn't anything else that we can do for you. Here's a little bit of money in the car. You've got to go figure it out." And to their grace and credit, I told them that I had somewhere to go. I told them that I was going to be fine. There's an apartment I could rent. I just need this much money and I'll be okay to do it. I took that money and spent it immediately on pills and a hotel room for the week. And once that week was up, I was homeless. You know,
Mm.
I did get to go stay with my dad for a little bit of time, but then he got sick pretty quickly. He had his own battle and journey. Um, so that probably lasted 2 or 3 months. And then I was literally officially homeless. Um, December of 2019, I became literally like on the streets, nowhere to go, homeless. Um, and the COVID didn't happen too long after that. So
Ah,
it kind of compounded everything.
I
There,
bet.
I think that took it from being just a homeless experience to like a furnace, like an inferno. When I tell you I got lost in the wilderness of my hometown, and I don't mean like actual wilderness, I just mean like the wilderness of the streets. I
Yeah.
got lost. I really did.
Wow. I mean, do you remember your first night out?
Maybe not the exact specific first night, but that first week I remember because okay, first of all, this town that I was homeless in is the town that I was born in, the
Oh,
town that I
wow.
graduated from, the town that I started college in, like my hometown. And I think that's why I went there because I know it so well. I knew where to go. I just knew my way around it. I might not have known many people there anymore because I was 10 years removed from it, plus some. Um, but I at least knew my way around and knew where I could duck off and get out of the way. And the first week out, I just remember finding abandoned buildings, junk cars. I slept in the bathroom at a ballpark a couple of times, but I stayed high. Okay, my OCD kicked into overdrive. And even though I was homeless and hungry, I was never without substances ever, which is crazy to look back on. And is really a highlighting factor in how I know my OCD was in control and not my addiction because most of us who end up on the streets homeless are have a lot of nights we're going without getting high. Okay, like that was my experience with other people who were out there. And they would kind of attach themselves to me because they knew I wasn't going without. I
I
was doing
bet I
something.
would too. Like, this
I
is my
mean,
boo.
I had like a gaggle of people behind me at all times, and I was like, "Hey, I want to be alone. Go away." But it also was pretty cool because I got to form some pretty cool symbiotic relationships with people. Like a lot of the people I knew out there. So first of all, the way that I did that, I'm not. I need to say and preface this, disclaimer. I'm not proud of it. I won't do it today. This was just a mechanism of survival for me. But I was boosting. I was shoplifting. And it was COVID, so you could literally walk into a Home Depot, fill up a Yeti cooler with DeWalt drills, and carry it out. Not proud of this. Okay, not for needs disclaimer, but that's what I did,
Yeah.
and I formed a symbiotic relationship with other people out there. I had working girls who were some of my dearest friends. They were always housed and clothed and fed always, and so I had the substances. I could go stay in one of their homes that they were in for one of their, what's the proper word, one of their sugar daddies. You would have a safe house with food and electricity and water where I could bathe, and I had the substances. And so that's also every now and then I could get a reprieve from the streets by doing something like that. Wasn't very often, but it did come in handy when I needed it. Um, but in general, I would just say it was always an abandoned house or a junk car or some kind of outdoor bathroom that I would find shelter in most of the time.
You become so resourceful, like that survival just like it kicks in.
Absolutely. It really does. And people are like, they don't care about themselves. People who use drugs, those junkies don't care about themselves. I don't think that's true at all. I think
No.
we are surviving. And if I wanted to take myself out, it would have been very easy, but I was trying to survive. And I'm proud of myself for doing that,
Oh,
especially through the
yeah.
inferno of COVID. I would go months without seeing anybody else or talking to anybody else but the plug. That was my dealer was the source of human connection for me. I had one guy in particular who would give me rides, bring me food. If he pulled up on me and I wasn't in good shape, he would be like, "We have to get you right before I serve you. Like, let's go get you a shower, let's get you some food, let's get you somewhere safe, and then we'll take care of the other thing." Or sometimes it's, "Here, let me get you right, and then we'll go do those
Yeah,
other things."
yeah.
But he was looking out for me. He cared about me. Um, and I really try to recreate that community now where I'm working at my job now. I try to recreate that for people who are still out there so they know they can rely on me like that. Maybe not for, obviously not for the substances, but for all the other pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's such a great thing to talk about because in society, right? Like I think a lot of like recovery culture is you demonize the substances once
Mm-hmm.
you get out of that life, and you definitely demonize the dealers and the people that you hang with.
Kill all fentanyl dealers.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Why are we talking like that? And it's true. That's when my one big beef with recovery creators or people in recovery in general, when they get out and then they put themselves on a pedestal and gatekeep recovery because now they're better than they used to be. Now they're better than me. Now they're better than you. And it makes it feel unattainable. That second piece to that, jails, institutions, or death. Well, I guess the third piece, the death. I really at a certain point felt completely disposable because there was no. Oh, well, let me just take you through the little. So let's talk about jails first, right? Okay. At a certain point, I had a wound that was so
Mm.
huge. It was the size of an open textbook. Okay, so jails weren't taking me anymore. They would arrest me for shoplifting or loitering or vagrancy, see that wound, and then they'd drop me off at the hospital. Okay, institutions, hospitals, crisis centers. They would laugh at me. The cops would drop me off, and I would hear them laughing. They made up a name for me, a diagnosis, incarceritis. They told me
Mm.
I came there because I was avoiding jail. That's the only reason I didn't want help. I didn't care about myself. They literally told me, "You did this to yourself. You'll never get opioids here. You'll never get pain management here. You caused this. So why are you surprised when I leave then? Why are you surprised if I don't want to stay and be treated like this then?" Okay, even I would throw all my drugs, all my syringes away and go to the crisis center, which was ironically, if I came out of the shopping center, I could go left to the crisis center or right to the plug. And every time I would come out of there, I would be like, "What am I going to do today?" And the one day that I chose the crisis center, they kept me there for 12 hours. And then, kind of punitively, because I had AMA'd before, they kept me for 12 hours in their waiting room. And then let me leave with a list of other crisis centers because they told me they didn't have a bed because I'd tried to leave. I tried to leave before. So it was just this really nasty way to treat somebody who was in the worst spot I'd ever been in my life, closer to death than I'd ever been in my life. And every time I would try to get help, that's what would happen to me. I would be passed off to the next person, passed off to the next person. And when I would leave, because I knew how to relieve my pain, I knew how to at least feel better for a few minutes. I don't want to be laughed at, mocked, or mistreated. So when I would leave and do that, I'd come back the next time. It's, well, you left. Why did you go? You, shame on you for leaving. It was this inferno of, I don't know. I felt like I was disposable. I felt like I should die. I was waiting for death. I was never suicidal, but I would have welcomed death. It would have been a relief for me at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine the extra layer of coming because I know any time that like when I would end up at the hospital after an overdose or just end up in the hospital like before detox or whatever, the stigma and the way that I would be mistreated, I can't imagine the extra layer of being unhoused and having a wound. Forget it. I mean,
Yeah,
I can't even imagine like it like actually like is like getting me teary-eyed thinking
yeah.
about the shit that you went through because that had to have been brutal.
It was terrible. It's like, everybody in these healthcare positions and these law enforcement positions, they would just take their vitriol out on you. These opinions that they have formed through their own camaraderie against people who use drugs. Then they're taking it out on me because I don't have anybody taking up for me. I don't
Right.
have anywhere to go. And I've told the story on my TikTok and maybe my Facebook before, but uh, another time I tried to go to the crisis center in my hometown. They got me to the back, they assessed my wound, and they were being really nice to me and really caring. And I thought I was going to get somewhere. They said, Sarah, we just aren't equipped to handle this wound here. And I knew that, but I was just I was begging for help. I was willing to do whatever they told me to do. um we can't do that. We can't handle this wound here. They gave me like literally a handful of tramadol, like 6 or 8 tramadol, a shot of Ativan, which at that point, give me a pain pill, okay? What? And 6 or 8 tramadol. What are we doing here? Anyway, they gave me a shot of Ativan in the booty, and they told me I was going to be directly admitted to the hospital when I got there. They promised me. I said, "Do you promise you're going to direct me? Because I can't. They're going to laugh at me. They don't want me there. I know they're not going to help me." And they said, "No, we've talked to the attending physician, the admitting physician. We've talked to all these people and the social worker. They're going to take you and directly admit you." As soon as the ambulance doors opened at the hospital, I heard it, laughing, snickering. "Oh, it's her again. Oh, it's her again." They took me off the ambulance through the back of the hospital, wheeled me through the hospital to the waiting room, and sat me there. That would have been enough, right? But I left in a blackout with a stranger, and I woke up in his bed the next morning. To this day, I don't know who this man is. I don't think anything terrible happened. I think he was sitting across the room in a chair when I woke up, thank God. But I truly don't know because I was completely blacked out. All I remember are little flashes of getting in. He like flagged his truck down. I remember getting in the truck with him. I don't know who he is. I don't know his name. All I know is he said he was Jesus and God was going to confirm that for me one
Oh
day.
no.
Hey, at this point, I I might believe the man
You
because
know?
maybe he saved me from something. I don't
Yeah.
know. But it just so if you could just imagine just one slap after another, after another, after another. I should have given up, and maybe anybody else would have, But the thing that really turned it around for me and made me think maybe I'm not disposable. Maybe I'm not going to end up dead. Um, it was pouring rain. I had a heavy backpack. For the first time in my whole homeless career, I was pushing a buggy because I just refused to be like those other guys. Okay, I just had this desperate need to be different, and I never pushed one until this day. I was pushing a buggy across the parking lot. It was pouring rain, and I couldn't go. I couldn't walk and breathe at the same time. My
Ugh.
chest hurt. Somehow I had avoided COVID to this point, and I still don't think I had it then, but it's kind of miraculous that I was able to avoid it. Right, knock on wood, knock on wood. um, but I was pushing this. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't take a step and take a breath at the same time. I was about to fall to the ground, and I looked up and I saw these employees from this department store walking toward me, and I was like, oh hell, they're coming to run me off. So I tried to get out of there. I tried to speed up and go, and I literally almost hit the ground. And by this point, they were to me. And then I realized that they had blankets and jackets and umbrellas. And they were kind of, putting the jackets on me, holding the umbrellas over me. They basically almost carried me across the parking lot onto their sidewalk. And they made me a little pallet. I'm going to cry thinking about this.
I know.
They made me a little pallet like next to their buggies underneath the awning so I could get out of the rain. And they said, you can sleep here tonight. This is a store that I'd shoplifted from that had every reason in the world to run me off. And they were like, you can sleep here, but you gotta leave in the morning because our manager will be here. But sleep here tonight, and please call somebody and get help. Please call somebody. You're gonna die. We're gonna lose you if you don't call somebody and go get help. And I don't know what changed in me when that happened, but I just started thinking to myself, maybe I am worthy. Maybe I do deserve some help. Maybe if these people who should hate me and want to run me off and call the cops on me care about me enough to make sure I'm safe and make sure I'm okay just for one night, maybe I do deserve help. So, and I think another part of me was, oh, they think I'm going to die. I think I probably am going to die. I don't want to die alone. Maybe there's some comfort out there for me.
Yeah.
So I think it was a mixture of those two things. I'm worthy. And if they think I'm going to die and I think I'm going to die, I'm probably going to die. So let me go get some help, let me go get some comfort. My dad had to come a few times before I decided to go. And the third time he came, I said, Dad, I'm sick. I'm in withdrawal. At least let me walk into this hospital at my baseline. I don't know how they're going to treat me. I don't know what they're going to do to me. At least let me walk in here, not in withdrawals.
Yeah.
He gave me $40 and I went and copped. And the whole ride to the hospital, which was about an hour, I was trying to hit my veins that did not exist anymore.
I
It was
hate
like
that.
I was miserable. And I honestly, Tara, if I had been able to hit closer to where I was, I might have just got out of the car. So maybe that was a universe thing working
Yeah,
finally in my favor. I didn't get it till we were pulling up in the hospital. All right. And
that's
this
so
was an
funny.
hour away. It is kind of funny. And I don't think I've ever really thought about that until right now. But and it was kind of miserable. And my poor dad was just up there in the front seat. I was in the back seat, and my stepmom was driving. They're just up there crying. I can't imagine what he
Yeah.
was thinking. Like, first of all, to let me do that, it had to be really, really bad. I don't even think I have a full representation of what I must have looked like, what other people must have seen when they looked at me then. Because to let me do that, he must have known that there wasn't much time left.
Yeah.
So when I got to the hospital, which is an hour away, it's the community I live in now, they didn't treat me like a problem. They didn't treat me like a pain in the ass. They didn't laugh at me. And I told them I was so honest with everything that I had been through, everything that I was using. I just told them the truth. I didn't have anything to lose anymore. They admitted me and started the antibiotics. I was septic. I had endocarditis. I had osteomyelitis, which is an infection in the bones. I had an affected breastbone. I had a fungal infection, yeast in my blood. I had scabies, so a parasitic infection, just about every kind of infection you could have. I had it. I started this journey at 300 plus pounds, and I was 135 pounds now. Skin and bones. If I hadn't shown up there, I know I wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation with you right now. They admitted me and they put me on palliative care. So they put me on a fentanyl patch and a Dilaudid drip, and they made me comfortable enough to stay and treated me like a human being. What a revelation, right? Like, what if they had just done that 2 years before at the hospital I had gone to dozens of times? What if they had just treated me like a human being then? So they not only did they put me on the palliative care, they also eventually, once I started sobering up and like thinking and having, because I was out there, Tara. I was out there. I had started using meth, maybe 6 or 8 months prior to this. So I didn't have to sleep and I didn't have to eat. It really did a number on my mind. Like it really did. I I was out there mentally. So once I started sobering up and coming back to reality, they put a hold on me. It wasn't a psychiatric hold. It was a different kind of hold that I can't even explain to you. I don't even know the proper terms for it. But it was so I couldn't leave, and it put a sitter in my room so that they could watch me, talk to me, just stay in touch with me. Um, and I didn't feel like I was being kept on a psychiatric hold, or, I felt like this was for my own good because they were communicating with me. They were telling me, this is what we're doing. This is why. This is Miss So and so is going to be in here with you. Let her know how you're feeling, or if you need to talk to any of us. They made me an active agent in my own recovery. They weren't telling me, you're doing this or you're going to die. You can't do it like this. You're out of here. It was just, you're participating in this with us. Let us know how you're feeling. And also, we're not just going to let you leave and make erratic decisions that might end your life, you know. Um, and then I think the real magic thing that happened is once I left there, I had a couple. I discharged on December 15th, which is the day before my birthday in 2021, and I count that as my date because even though I had some slips after that, I did not. I didn't go back to the streets. I didn't go back to using fentanyl. I didn't go back to using meth. Um, the magic thing that truly happened was a couple of weeks or maybe a month after I left there, I checked into my local community service board, which was a behavioral health. They had a MAT program, and I started Suboxone. And probably for the first 3 months of that treatment, I wasn't sure if I was going to stay. I had a plan to get out of there. I was like contemplating my way back to the streets every minute because I just wasn't convinced that I could do this thing. Because all my examples of recovery before me were people who I did not identify with. I don't see myself in these people. I'm never going to be able to do X, Y, or Z. That's not the kind of life I want. That's not
Right.
the kind of attitude toward recovery I want to have. I want, and I still think there's a lot of work to be done. I'm still doing a lot of work on my own internalized stigma that, we all have it and we're all
Mm-hmm.
battling it. But so until that point, I didn't see myself as being able to recover. But this MAT program just treated me from an individualized perspective. Okay. I still had a wound that was huge that caused me a lot of pain. There were points in my early MAT recovery that I had to stop Suboxone and take pain medication. They were totally okay with that. They spoke to my physician and spoke to me, and it was possible for me to do that when I needed it. The program director found a surgeon for me, went with me an hour away to those surgical appointments, picked me up from the hospital after my surgery. Like, they just really saw me as an individual, not as a peg to fit in a hole, you know, which really changed everything for me, honestly. And I'm sorry I've gotten so far off topic. I've been
No,
answering your
no,
question for
no.
10 minutes now.
No, no, no. No, I think it's perfect. Everything that you're saying is perfect because I think it's so easy to see people, at some of the lowest moments in their life and just see them as not human, right? You
Yes.
you just like you just it's almost like a point of like disgust, like, oh, like,
Yes.
and we're like, oh, well, there's so much help of it, like especially in Massachusetts, people will be like, there's so much help available, but and there is, but like you said, even going into what is help? What is help when you get there and you're treated like shit? Like at
Exactly.
what point, like, and what, you're just supposed to take it because you're just supposed to be grateful to have it? No, no, that's not how that
No,
works.
exactly. And people would tell me that all the time, even my own family. There's so much help, Sarah. You just got to find it. You just got to accept it. First of all, when you're homeless and you don't have a phone and you don't have a means of transportation, the help that is out there is limited to what's in a 2 or 3 mile radius that you feel comfortable enough to walk into and ask for and accept help. Okay. When you're homeless, you are beat down so far that, I mean, society has really put you in your place. There were homeless shelters and homeless resource centers that I would not dare darken their doorway because I knew better. I wasn't like those people. I'm on drugs. They don't want to help me. That's for the homeless people who aren't on drugs. That's for the homeless people who this or that. I don't fit into those categories. Um, and so today, I work for a homelessness alliance, a nonprofit today, and it's down here in the Bible Belt. And before me, and still, there is a lot of a lot of those ideals, the puritanical beliefs that somebody must have done something to cause their homelessness. If they're using drugs, they don't deserve help. Abstinence is a prerequisite for anything. I try so hard to counteract all those things, but I have to do it in a tactful way where I'm not just booed out of the venues, 2 or 3 years ago, I was going with my MAT clinic into a small rural community adjacent to us to do a Narcan training. And they literally, once they found out that it was a Narcan training, they canceled it. They made public Facebook posts, and some of the community members were talking about how that enables drug use, and that you know, we can't have them here doing this because it's just going to encourage people and make them think they can keep using drugs. Unfortunately, later that month, there were 7 overdoses.
Oh,
And so that was the beginning of us being allowed to even talk about it. And now we've worked up to a point where I'm a distributor for Georgia Overdose Prevention, so I've got Narcan on deck all the time. People are calling me and asking me to come and do Narcan trainings all over the community. We have a recovery coalition called the Trust Partnership, and we have meetings every other month. I do Narcan trainings and I talk about harm reduction there. We're turning this nonprofit that we have, this Homelessness Alliance, into a recovery community organization, but with a spin because we're heavily into harm reduction and keeping people alive while they're using and making them feel like they are valid and worthy of coming into our spaces and that they belong here with nothing. You don't have to change anything about you. I want you here just because you're here, because we love you and you are good enough without changing anything about you. Those things are so important to me. And I feel like sometimes I feel like I'm fighting a losing battle, but then I get back on the horse and I just remind myself that progress to success is not failure. And sometimes progress has ups and downs. You win some and you lose some, but we're still moving forward in a positive direction. But I think it's really important that to treat somebody like they're worthy just like they are, and to look at them through an individual lens. You can't try to put somebody into a box or into a peg into a hole.
and that's what we do. That's what society does. Everyone, there is the addict, there is the homeless person, the homeless drug addict. Then there,
Yes.
like everyone has
Yes.
these labels, and if you fall under that label, there is a million assumptions that are made about you. And it's just you can't even
Yes.
years removed from it, you have that in your
Some of the substances that aren't opioids or narcotics or, scheduled in some way are worse for you. There are
alcohol.
drug schedule. Yeah, not to mention nicotine, all of that. So it's just, it's so crazy the way the government can get into the business of doctors and then kind of influence them to treat patients a certain way based on their history or the substances they take. It's pretty crazy. Like, I don't talk about this a lot, but I'm still on pain management protocol post-op for my surgery, and because I do utilize opioid pain medication, there's still stigma, like internalized stigma in my mind that is and also along with my OCD, sometimes I'll think, am I making all this up? Am I doing this just so I can take pain meds? like that's how real the internalized stigma is in me still. I have to check myself constantly and talk to my therapist about it when I need to remind myself that no, like that's not how this works. Your worth and value and validity as a person is not based on what you're putting into your body at any point in time ever. But it's just crazy that even though after all I've been through and the hole I crawled out of and the message that I put out to the world today, I still I'm still hard on myself and I still am not grasping it 100% all the time. And that's why an important part of my recovery story that I didn't talk about was finding you guys on TikTok, like you and Sarah from Savage Sisters. And I mean, there's too many to name, so I'm not even going to try because I know I'll leave somebody out.
Yeah.
But finding my harm reduction community on the internet turned it all around for me in those early stages when I was, beginning Suboxone, still living with the wound and so much pain all the time. I mean, I had this wound. I didn't have surgery until January of last year that closed this wound. So everything I was doing in the community, everything that I was doing to advocate and to volunteer, I was doing it in so much pain constantly. And then I found you guys online, and just the message of love, radical empathy, radical acceptance made it possible not only for me to also do this in my community, but to treat myself with radical empathy, radical love, and radical acceptance. I don't know that I ever would have gone to get my surgery without input and influence from the harm reduction community, without learning everything that I have learned about harm reduction. I probably would have been one of those people who thought I could never take an opioid ever again because I'm allergic,
Mm-hmm.
or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I'm just so thankful for you guys, and for learning so much from everybody that I have learned from online. I really am.
And now look at you. I mean, you're a powerhouse, right? You know what I mean? Like right in the mix. I mean, online and in your community and doing so much. And your story, again, is so powerful because to look at where you are now, what you're
Yeah,
doing now, and to know where you came from, it just shows people like, no, nobody is ever too far gone.
100%. If I had one overarching message, it would be that nobody is ever too far gone. Everybody has the ability to turn it around. And besides that, like, what you think would be success for them might not be the thing that they are going for. That might not be their end goal. We have to understand. There's something that we say down here. Let me try to remember it. Okay, strengths, needs, abilities, and preferences. Everybody has those things, and they should be considered. They should consider them for themselves in their own recovery. We should consider them those things when we're talking about them and directing them and guiding them, and I guess coaching. I hate using the word coaching. I don't like that word, but we should acknowledge all of those things. And clients and peers have autonomy over themselves and their recovery, and they have the ability to decline an option. And you can't
Yes.
use that against them. What you see as their success or as their end goal might be totally opposite of what they want. They might not ever want to do something like I'm doing, in advocacy roles and peer support roles, and it might not be their idea of success. They might just want to, go get a 9 to 5 job and have a little whatever it
Yeah.
is. We have to support them 100% in that, and we can't judge them or um, let our stigma control the way we're thinking about them if their idea of success doesn't match ours, which is
Totally.
incredibly important.
It is. It is. And it's so easy to think that, especially when someone is, when you see someone who's homeless, it's so easy to be like, let's just get them somewhere. Let's just put them somewhere. Let's just get them out from
Yeah,
the street. I can't speak for everyone, but I'm almost certain that majority of people who are there have tried and seeked out some sort of help in some sort of way. But the help, especially, with your wound, the supply that's out there today, it makes it even that much more complicated because
yes,
places are not equipped. Like you said, you went to these places, they weren't equipped to handle it.
yes, which is only going to continue to be a problem, because the more we prohibit things, the more random and harmful the illicit supply is going to get. We're never going to be equipped to handle the fallout of prohibition ever.
No,
It's not, and more of it is not going to fix it. We can also do a whole different episode on that.
totally.
There's a lot to say about that, but we're just never going to be able to equip it we're never going to be equipped to handle the fallout of that. So I think for people who finally make it out of the struggle, finally make it out, we have to do everything we can to counteract the stigma, to counteract the harmful rhetoric that keeps people sick, that keeps people stuck in these places. No matter what role we go into, even wherever we work. I have a peer who's on my advisory council. He works at T-Mobile, and every day he goes into work, he's carrying that same message in that recovery is real. It doesn't matter where you are, who you are, you deserve it. You're capable of it. Um, I just think that's so important that we have a duty and a responsibility not to be assholes,
Yeah,
not to be
totally.
limiting, gatekeeping assholes.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could say it better than that.
No, yeah, totally. And it's like, I think it's so easy for people like they want to help so much and they want to, it's so much like it becomes about themselves and not about the person that they're actually trying to help, you know?
Yes, it becomes a way to fill your own cup and to pat yourself on the back
Hmm.
that you're not thinking about the actual human being who is in front of you. And as somebody who is a semi-retired people pleaser,
Mm.
um, sometimes I have to even check myself that I am really considering what is the best for this person and not, I'm kind of addicted to good job, Sarah. You did great on that. You're doing really good. So I even have to keep my own self in check that I am not that I'm considering them before myself and before the good jobs I'm going to get from all these other people in places of power, because that's not the important thing. The important thing is reaching the person who doesn't have any power at all, who is out there on their own and completely limited by society as to access to resources. Like, I just and when I said that I try to recreate the camaraderie and community that I experienced at some points, when I was on the street with my dealer, and just the community that we had, I really do mean that. I try to be a point of contact for them, a safe place for them when they're coming in off the street. I want to make myself accessible so that they can ask for any need that they might have. And if I'm not able to meet it, I want them to know that I'm going to go to work trying to at least find you an avenue, somebody to ask, somebody else to ask. And I want to do a warm handoff. I want to make sure that I'm walking them there or calling and putting them on the phone so that they're introduced to another person who might help them instead of just handing them a piece of paper and telling them good luck.
Mm.
We have to be a network. We have to work really hard to make connections and to make sure people are safe and at least feel safe enough to ask us for the things that they need, because you wouldn't imagine how hard it is just to get connected to resources when you're out there. Going back to people saying there's so much help, all you have to do is ask, all you have to do is accept it. Well, when your world is so small and you're so limited, that's not true. So I try to connect those dots for people,
Yeah.
as much as I can.
And it's so important because, like I said, you go somewhere, they say, hey, we can't help you here, but here's a list. I don't have a phone. So how am I calling these places? 'Cause a lot of times you got to do intakes on the phone, all that stuff. And it's like we're not, yes, there are technically a lot of resources out there, kind of, but they're not accessible to the people that you think need to, you know what I mean? Like
A
the
hundred
people that
percent.
really need them don't have the same access as the kid that's still living at home struggling.
A
It's not the
hundred
same.
percent. Yeah. Not having a phone, it limits your ability to call, to get a call back. Um, it limits your ability to even stay connected with family who might be trying to help you.
Mm-hmm.
I really love Brandy Mack's story. I
Yes.
just got her book and I haven't opened it yet because I'm reading Dee Dee Stout's second book now, but hers is coming up right behind that one. But I she's somebody whose story I have watched, not from the beginning, but from the point in time where she was still trustworthy and believing in the treatment industry. And when they let her daughter leave without a phone on the streets of a town she had never lived in, that's scary to be out there without connection when you're lost. And then, if you are someone who uses and you've just come out of rehab, your tolerance is lower. And if you don't have a phone, you can't get connected with family. Well, the next best thing is going to get high right now, because that's just going to fix it right now in the moment,
Yeah.
and that's dangerous. That's so dangerous. Um. Anyway, yeah, the resources that exist that are out there, it's really different for people who aren't connected and who don't have a car, a phone, or a way to get to those things. So that's really something that I try to do in my small corner of the world, in my small little rural town in Georgia. I try to connect those dots and be that safe place and the connecting resource for people who need it.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
I want to ask one last question. I feel like you've kind of already answered it with just like, you know, being a human, but
Yeah.
if someone if someone does want to help, right? And they do see people, that are unhoused, homeless, what what do you think would be the best route? I mean, I guarantee
Mm-hmm.
it's not filming giving them a sandwich.
You already know I was going to go there. Yeah, whatever you do, don't bring a camera with you, okay? I understand wanting to be safe in some areas that you might not be comfortable with, so maybe go with a friend. But in general, people who are homeless they don't want to hurt you. They're not going to bother you if you are coming to them to offer them something that they might need. My number one suggestion: give them some cash. Just give them some cash. you probably don't know what they need. And if you have a bag full of stuff, I guarantee you 50% of it is going to get left right where you handed it to them, because things are heavy to carry.
Mm,
And if you don't have an immediate need for something that's in this bag, we can't carry it. We can't put it, it's heavy and it becomes more of a burden than a help. Just hand them some cash. And as a parting word, I guess, if you're worried that they're going to use it for drugs, boy, are you a privileged person.
mm.
If that's your one thought, oh, clutching my pearls, what if they use it for drugs? If you don't have to get high today to survive your life, I want you to just say a prayer tonight and thank God or the universe for that, because nobody wants to be burdened with that. But sometimes it is the thing that's going to keep somebody hanging on. If they're homeless, if they're sick and they're suffering, especially with wounds or in any kind of pain, I guarantee you they'll get more from that $10 or $20 using it for that reason than they would a bag full of canned food that they can't even open. Um, and also, you know, I, I'm trying to think about my neighbors down here in the South and how what I would really want to say about the money thing and the drugs thing. Um, Sometimes if you give somebody $20 and they're going to go spend it on substances, you're really relieving them of what they might have had to do if you didn't hand that to them. Sometimes the activity someone is going to participate in to get the drugs are more dangerous than the drugs themselves. I would say most of the time. So maybe that might make it a little easier to think about like that.
Totally. I think that is a great point. Like if you in your heart of hearts really want to make, if you're seeing that person, you're like, I want to make their day a little bit better, a little bit easier. Oh, we've been conditioned to think the whole, like you said, what if they use it on drugs? It's like, well, I mean, chances are they're going to have to come up with the money some way, somehow that day. And if you just help them prevent, save themselves from having to do something that really they didn't want to have.
Traumatize
Yeah,
them or hurt
yeah.
themselves or hurt the community, even if you need to look at it like that.
Exactly.
Yep.
And I know we're not used to thinking that way. And it's like to some people, they're gonna be like, "Oh, hell no! I would never give somebody who's using drugs. I would never give them money. Never, ever, ever." And that is your choice, a hundred
That is your
percent.
choice.
That is a hundred
Yes.
percent your choice. But I do think these conversations about kind of just like thinking about it a little bit differently. If you and I both know that they are most likely going to get high today, regardless of whatever,
Right.
and you really want to make their day a little bit easier, that is the best thing you can do. And whether maybe they won't use it on drugs, right? Like
A 100%.
you know?
But the thing is, that's their decision. They're
Right.
adult human beings. They're living a totally different way than you are. You get to go home and close your door and sleep in your safe bed and eat food that you can just open your fridge and access. They don't have any of these things. So who are we to judge them for doing a thing that might make their life just a little bit easier today, you know?
Right.
Um, and if you just can't make your mind go there, thank your lucky stars for that too, you
Yeah.
know? Um,
Totally.
and then also, besides just handing them some cash or, something like that, I would say if you could just do some research in your community and make a list of these resources that we always talk about,
Mm.
write the name, the address, a phone number, a contact name, and maybe a little bit about what they do and what you can get if you go there. Just have it on a little card or a piece of paper to give out with that. That will be so incredibly helpful, because I meet people still every week in the small town that I live in who had no idea that we exist where we are. So I think that some cash and a resource card is probably the
Yeah.
most helpful thing. Yeah,
Yeah. I agree. That's some really good stuff. And honestly, Sarah, I'm gonna have to have you back on because there's just too many things to talk
definitely.
about. I absolutely love the opportunity just to chat with you. I've been following your story for years now. I remember when you were like going back and forth with your wound and like going back and forth and all the shit that you
I know.
had to go through for that. And then you like didn't you have like the skin graft surgery? I mean, you went
Yes,
through so much shit,
I,
dude.
I did. I had three skin graft surgeries altogether, probably two in the time that you've seen me on TikTok. So many wound care appointments, medications, creams. I just went through so much hell with it, and it's so surreal to sit here with you today with it closed. It's crazy. And then I moved in. I'll never forget when I moved into my new apartment and you sent me some spoons. I still have that little note on my bulletin board. I think it's like no more burnt spoons or
Yeah.
something. I love it. It just cracked me up. But that would you realize that was like 2.5 years ago now?
It's
It
crazy.
is crazy. But I really thank you for having me on too. I have also loved following your story. I feel like we're learning so much together, which is such a cool and interactive experience. Like we really and you teach me so much and
You teach me.
you validate my feelings and my experience from someone who is just so sick and tired of 12 steps and their dogma and rhetoric and effect on society. Like I just really appreciate our friendship and this has been really cool to get to talk to you. I feel like I talked way too much, but
No, no, you did. You did amazing. Like I said, I want to have you back on and maybe just talk about some like hot button topics, going on. I would love that.
happily. I would love that too, Tara. Thank you for having me on.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you guys for listening and see you next time.